What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we've got a new video talking about ice barriers. If you did not hear, this archetype just won the structure deck vote in the OCG, which means they are guaranteed to get a structure deck, I believe, in December in the OCG, and we'll probably get one not too soon after there. So today I just wanted to go through and I want to talk about what ice barriers already have going for them and what I think / hope Konami does in terms of the new support coming in the structure deck. So that's what this video is going to be. I think the best way to start, like I said, is to get to know this archetype. If you don't know this archetype that well, we should go through the cards and see what that deck has already that is any kind of relevant, and then go from there, right? So I think the best place to start is with the extract monsters, because these are the most relevant things, probably, at least in terms of power. Right, because we've already seen these cards in the meta before. Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. If this card resolves, you're probably just winning whatever duel that is. I mean, it's a banish 3, but it's from different spots. You're taking hand advantage, you're taking field advantage, you're taking grave advantage away from your opponent. Insanely good card. Brionnic, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, also an insane card, because as long as you have enough discard fodder, you can just bounce like an entire field. Very, very good as well, especially for removing extra deck monsters. And then Gungnir, again, like another card, as long as you have enough discard fodder, you don't have to bounce, though, which is really nice, because if you were bouncing back row, like with Brionnic, you'd rather be going Gungnir at that point, because you'd rather be popping back row than bouncing them to hand. So all three are good. The deck has removal as long as they can fairly reliantly get into these cards. The removal's intact for the archetype, and I think that's pretty nice. Then we move to what a lot of the deck seems to be, or a lot of the archetype seems to be developed over the, I guess, span of this archetype's lifetime, which is like weird floodgate effects or lock effects. They're like really weird. You'll see what I mean when we get into it. So let's start with Secret Guards. This card just says, face up ice barrier monster you control cannot be targeted by the effects of your opponent's effect monsters. Not the greatest thing. It's targeting protection, but it's only for monsters, so spells and traps could still be a problem. But I guess it's fine if it's paired with multiple other things, and he's in defense position. Look at the 100 attack. Oof. Next up is Numbing Grub. Particularly, I threw this one in here because I don't know how the ruling works, because this guy says on normal summon you can select an unused monster card zone, and while this card's on the field, the selected zone can't be used. So I didn't know if you could target an extra monster zone, because you could target one of the extra monster zones and then summon something into the other, essentially like extra linking your opponent. But we're not in Master Rule 4 anymore, so people could still summon Exceed, Synchro, Fusions, elsewhere on the field. Not a big deal. But as we've seen with like Synchro, Eldritch, and Emancipator, they do kind of rely on going links early in their combos to get them to the Synchros later on. So that could actually be something relevant if the ruling works that way. I just want to throw it out there. Also, he's the ugliest card in the entire archetype. Ugh. Next up is Warlock of the Ice Barrier. This card says, while you control another Ice Barrier monster, both players must set spells before they activate them, and they can't be activated the turn they're set, which is actually pretty cool. It's literally like a walking in-archetype anti-spell fragrance, which we know is an insanely powerful card, especially against like popular side deck options like Dark Ruler No More, Lightning Storm, stuff like that, Mind Control. All those cards aren't nearly as good now if you can establish this card. Now this card's pretty weak, so like that's its bigger weakness, but still a pretty good floodgate effect for sure. And then we have Spellbreaker of the Ice Barrier, kind of a similar-esque card there. She says once per turn you can send an Ice Barrier from hand to the graveyard, and if you do, spells cannot be activated until the end phase of your next turn, as long as this card remains face up on the field. So obviously it has to remain face up on the field, but that's with any like lock stuff in general tends to be. This effect's also pretty strong. I mean, like, as long as you activate all the spells you wanted for the turn, then you're just like, all right, I'll just discard this Ice Barrier, and now you or me don't get spells until the end of my next turn. I've already used my spells, so I probably won't even need to by the end of my next turn, and you're just like shut down. Imagine this versus like something like Sky Strikers. Totally insane. Same thing with Warlock. But definitely has the power there. It definitely needs to be paired with something, but there is like something there, I think. Next up is Medium of the Ice Barrier. This card's pretty cool. It can actually summon it can actually just special summon itself from hand if your opponent has 4 more cards than you do. They control it, actually. Which is pretty cool. And then, but her main effect is your opponent can only activate 1 spell or trap per turn. Not terrible, honestly. Like, they can't ever double impermanence you. If they evenly match you, they can't activate any other traps that turn. Stuff like that, I mean, but those are the trap things. Obviously, the main thing is spells here. just means once they get one, if they can't remove her, they're stuck to that one for the entire turn, which can really limit people's like power output in a lot of decks, which is pretty cool. And the last one, as far as the floodgate effects go, is General Raiho, and this is probably my favorite card of all of these here. He says, when an effect resolves that was activated by an effect monster that was on your opponent's side of the field, they must discard one card or the effect is negated. I know it's worded super weird, but essentially it just means if your opponent's trying to activate a monster effect on field, they either have to discard a card on resolution, or the effect is just straight up negated. And it's not once per turn, it's just every single time. And so this card's pretty cool because if your opponent like is going to try and just barrel through it, they're going to lose their entire hand. And if they're not playing a super graveyard centric deck, they can just run out of resources playing against a card like this. I know there are other ways to play around it, like if you have spells or traps, you can set them all, because this card can't make you discard if you don't have anything to discard, so like you can dodge around it that way. But like still, I think it is a pretty nice card that if you pair this up with one or two other legitimate disruptions, this card could be a problem. And then we get to the other ancillary, like just like monsters that are interesting. Prior is one of them, because if you control an Ice Barrier, he can just summon himself from the hand. His main problem, though, is the turn you do that, you cannot special summon any level 5 or higher monsters, which like is what this deck wants to do right now. He can also tribute himself to special an Ice Barrier from grave, but again, if you summon him that turn already, you can't summon anything level 5 or higher. Still pretty bad, right? Like, I don't know, like I think it could come up just as an extender, but like only if it's an extender that like where your play doesn't involve you needing to go into any level 5 or higher. Other than that, I love his artwork. I think he looks dope, but yeah, he's kind of weird. Next up is Dance Princess. She bounces back row by revealing Ice Barrier monsters in your hand, which is fine. I mean, it's a bounce. It's not the greatest removal of back row, but it does force stuff out. It's interesting, and it's 1700, so like that's kind of cool. And she's waifu. Next up is Strategist. This is a cool, like, interesting, like, I don't know, what's the word for it? Like, deck thinning card. It just says, like, once per turn you can send an Ice Barrier from hand to grave to draw a card. He's 16/16, which means his stats could be worse, but, like, that's not the worst. I mean, like, you're just going one for one, but, you know, especially if maybe Ice Barriers end up having some, like, interesting graveyard synergy, that could definitely be good. I mean, you're just digging for whatever while also potentially putting cards in the grave that might have wanted to be in the grave in the first place. So we'll see where this goes. This could be an interesting card, though. And then we get to the bigger generals, the other generals. We have Gantala of the Ice Barrier here. He just says once per turn during your end phase, you can select an Ice Barrier in the graveyard and special summon it. The reason that's fine because it's on end phase, because like assuming you're going first, if you can just get to him and you have one of your floodgate monsters in the grave, you're just like, let me get that back. Let me grab that Raiho from grave. You know what I mean? Like, let me just load him back up, and now you're playing through that on your turn, which is actually pretty cool. So other than that, he doesn't really do much, but if the deck goes in a route where these guys are so easy to get out, maybe they will be interesting. They won't be interesting if we have to tribute summon them, though. That's terrible. And then we have General Grunard of the Ice Barrier. He just says during your main phase you can normal summon an Ice Barrier monster in addition to your normal summon or set, and it's a hard once per turn, or you can only get that effect once per turn. Also pretty cool. I mean, just get, like, if you can get him out, he's then that big body, but then he also just like, yeah, extend. It's an extender sort of. So like I said, if these guys become really easy at getting out and not like tribute summon ways, you know, other ways where there's like super easy, this could be really interesting. So he's another card I thought was pretty cool. And then the last card I wanted to mention here is Medallion of the Ice Barrier. This is probably the most important singular card as far as being relevant to what the new support will be. And you know what this card is? It's Rhoda for Ice Barriers. This card just says add one Ice Barrier monster from deck to hand. So simple, so plain, but consistency-wise, this card is huge. It means with whatever new monster the archetype gets, you can play 6 of it. Not 3 of it, 6 of it. That's pretty good, and that's if they don't get, like, I don't know, like a field spell that searches monsters, because that's what Konami wants to make for every archetype that they like. We'll see what happens, but like this card is so great for consistency. Not once per turn as well, so that's also very strong. And yeah, I just think this card for like consistency and utility wise will be so important for whatever the support ends up being. Now, those are all the cards I thought were relevant. You pretty much have your extract monsters that are pretty good removal. but not quick removal. You have your main deck stuff, which ends up being like a couple of interesting cards, and then like mainly just like those weird floodgate effects that don't do a ton on their own. You need like 2 to 4 of them to like actually stack up and be like a relevant force as far as like scaring your opponent away. And then we have Medallion, which is like crazy important and crazy good because it's just one slot that's like really good for the deck that they don't have to worry about doing in the structure deck as far as the new cards go. So this pretty much brings us to the part of the video where we look at what this deck needs. Plain and simply, guys, this deck needs like everything. Like Medallion is a nice help for consistency, but you'd still probably appreciate one more card that's good for consistency. The extra monsters are good for removal, but we still have to wait and see if Konami's going to build this new support in a way that allows them to do that synchro summoning like easily. Like for those to be relevant, they need to be makeable in one turn easy. Not just makeable, but like makeable through a disruption for it to be relevant, right? Because like they're mainly good going second or in mid to late game, but you have to like beta negate first because that's how Yu-Gi-Oh works in 2020. So we'll have to see on that stuff. Even that stuff is still like, we got to see what kind of else comes out. But the main thing, the number one thing that I need to see for this archetype is an engine. This deck has no engine. This deck doesn't do anything. Like none of the cards get you anywhere. They're fine. Some of them are fine effects. Like you have like Raiho in the medium. Like those are pretty cool, and especially in tandem. But like literally right now the deck is just like normal summon one Ice Barrier monster, maybe set some back row, try and stall for a turn, and hope your monster remains on field. And then next turn, normal summon another Ice Barrier. Boom. That's how you got 2 floodgate effects. But it's like so bad. It'll take you so many turns because the deck has no engine. It's just normal summon, normal summon, normal summon, turn after turn. And if like your opponent keeps knocking off your monsters, you'll never get more than one monster on the field, which means your floodgate effects definitely don't do enough, and you just lose. So number one, first and foremost, the deck needs some kind of supportive engine of like ways to get more than one monster on the field, ways to just churn them out, search them, special them from hand, special them from deck. I don't care. They got to find it somehow, right? Next up is the deck needs disruption. We have these weird floodgate effects, but all the deck needs is like combine 1 or 2 of those floodgate effects with like one respectable disruption. And I don't know if I don't know if you want Konami to give you like an in-archetype hand trap. That could be kind of cool, but like do it in a way where it's like you have to reveal it and like another Ice Barrier in hand, so that like you can't just play it in any deck, right? That could be kind of cool, but then make it powerful so that really it's powerful, but it's like Subterra Fiendus. You can only play it in Subterras, or in this case Ice Barriers, so that could be something interesting. Or you just give them some traps that are searchable some way somehow. Maybe we get a new monster that's kind of like a Stratos, if they just want to be basic and simple about it, but people won't be mad because what's good is good. You know, don't break the mold if it works. It could be anything. It could be a monster, spell, trap. I don't care. But the deck needs probably some disruption, or you probably need to like somewhat power creep some of these like lock effects. The reason I like disruption more is because disruption is better going second than it is than floodgate effects. Like once you're going second, like your floodgate effects do nothing. Your opponent's already done everything that they didn't have to do through the floodgate effects, and they were clean to go. So the deck needs something disruption, like some kind of quick removal of your opponent's stuff, or some kind of negate somewhere somehow. Like I don't know, it just needs like one of those that's like fairly consistently like gettable. And Medallion could help with that. Like I said, if they got a Stratos, like Medallion into the Stratos into your disruption, or into something that like at least a path, like a line of like play that gets you to a disruption, right? Something like that. And the last thing is like consistency is like the other thing, like consistency / utility. I mean, we have some utility here, but mainly like the disruption would be like the other thing. Like we have removal, we have some floodgate effects, or we have searchability. But the deck needs like some utility, like some cards that do some other things that the rest of the archetype doesn't to like kind of cover up those holes. So those are the things I'd like to see. I mean, like I know it sounds like I just listed off like every part of Yu-Gi-Oh, but like that's what I'm saying. This deck, this archetype right now reminds me of how Charmers were before they went and like gave Charmers the structure deck and the links and stuff. Is that you kind of looked at them and you were just like, wow, if I were to build this deck the best that it can be, it'd be like vanilla stun. You just play 1850 vanillas with like Fairy Tale Luna to search them out, but not able to summon them that turn. And then you just play a ton of traps. That's the best way to play that deck. And that's kind of the best way to play this deck. You just play like the better ice barrier monsters and a ton of traps, because you have to protect them and they don't protect themselves fast enough. So it like kind of feels like that. It's just a deck that just like has some cards. They're way too old. They have no engine to get anywhere. And so they just don't do anything at the moment. So we really need that engine. That's the first and foremost, because the engine could get you to all that stuff I was saying before. The engine could get you to disruption, utility of other effects, like the removal in the extra deck, the the floodgate effects, the disruption if we got it, like all that stuff. You'd be getting it through your engine, which is what the deck needs more than anything. So a couple of thoughts I had on specific things the deck might want, or Konami might want to look at. Maybe just give them a Link 1 that's like Max or Trap Trick Sarah, as like a Link 1 that gets you access to like maybe your spells or traps and a monster or something like that. Special summon multiple monsters like the Max does, because I don't even know if they got a monster that just said like on summon, special summon a Ice Barrier monster from the deck. Like I don't even know if that's good enough. Like I guess like pull a Raiho out and that's actually like fine for a 1-card investment, but you got to have some support behind that. That ain't gonna get it done by itself, right? So like maybe that, but like another 1 or 2 effects like bonus, but like it'd have to be insane, because that's a Link 1 that does that much. It'd be insane, but that could be an easy, quick route to like start establishing an engine, because like that's kind of how Musketeers are. Is like all you need is 1 normal summonable Musketeer, and like boom, there's your engine. Is Max. Max is going to get you like a +2 at least like every time. So go from there. Another thing that's interesting is like Altergeist Multifaker. I thought about something like that, where like instead of a trap activating, maybe it had a different condition. Like if your opponent does something, even going second on their opponent's first turn, you do something that like summon this card and then summon another Ice Barrier. That way you could drop that card and then summon one of the Floodgate effects on your opponent's turn, so that now on their first turn they're having to play through a Raiho, through the I don't know, the spell one, whatever, the one that says like they can't activate spells, like depending on the archetype, like that could be pretty nasty, right? So I thought that would be something interesting as well. These are just a couple of specific examples. There's a ton of ways Konami could take this. It could be any kind of disruption, any kind of like, you know what I mean, engine. That's up to them, but these are just a couple of things I was thinking of. In terms of like if they want to make it quick, simple, like a really good card that they can just boom throw in there and that's immediately a game changer. These 2 cards are definitely those, because these are like the centerpiece cards of their own archetypes, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I don't know, like I did my best here to go through this, talk about what I think the deck needs, gave a couple examples. Of course, as always, you guys know, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think? Like if you could give me a specific example of a card that you think like would be awesome for Ice Barriers, like but their own version, definitely throw that down in the comments below. I'd be very curious to hear what you guys think, because I am not a perennial like Ice Barrier follower. You guys might know this better than me. I mean, I went over the cards, but that's about all the experience I have with the archetype. So definitely let me know your thoughts on this down below. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.